Well, welcome to the Pay Bread Quarterly Slush Pile. We're so happy that you're here and listening in to us. And that's essentially what you're really doing. We are about to have an editorial meeting. Today we have Michael Montlack's poems to discuss, and we will read them aloud and we will talk about them, and it'll be just like you're at the meeting with us. Feel free to write us after the fact, but we're going to vote today. So you don't get a vote, but you can tell us what it's like. The us is some constant members and sometimes different members. And today we have such a beautiful and long-running lovers of literature and PBQ hard-working worker bees. And I'm going to start off with myself because that's just how I'm built. That little ding dong is Jason Schneiderman. We'll allow him to completely have all his cells come back into. Remember that on Star Trek?
Yes.
Where they would go and then transport. I really thought we were going to have teletransportation by the time I was a grown up.
I also just want to note that you called Jason a little ding dong.
Jason, I said, did you hear that little ding dong? It's Jason.
Oh my God. Sorry.
My sound was off, so when I came in, I'm a mess. Wait, just give me a moment.
You sound like you have a cold? He sounds like he has a cold.
Oh, I have the same bronchial thing from yeah. It's like I'm like Kathleen. My Kathleen Turner impression is really good. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I'm not bad. I'm just.
Oh my God, you're
I sound more like the those Batman movies.
You sound
yes, totally.
I'd like to order a coffee.
Either way, it's working for you.
Yeah, you sound like Christian Bale as Batman, totally.
Well, that just happened, which doesn't mean that the crow is not still gorgeous today. He might be under the weather, but he's looking good.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, I'm Kathleen Volkmiller, and we're all recording from home, but we have a talented tech crew with us too, so we're all good. I'm in South Jersey, and I'm going to bounce it to an ex-South Jersey resident, Marion Wren.
Woo! Jersey. I'm all the way in Abu Dhabi. But I never told you this, Slushies, but we have a student journal that we call Exit 11. And it's mostly because I'm from Jersey. We're here on Exit 11, right? That's where you find the campus. But I was like, we should just call it after the exit, because in Jersey, that's how you designate your coordinates, off the turnpike or off the parkway. So I'm glad to be thinking of New Jersey, and I'm glad to be in this conversation. And I'm going to bounce it to Canada, Dagne.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, my local numbers for turnpikes and highways are 417 and 29. So that's all you need to know. Yeah.
Close as we're getting.
Yeah. And I'm going to roll it down to Sam.
Yay. Hi, everyone. I am down in DC. And I honestly, because I don't drive, know nothing about the turnpikes around me. I just hope my Uber drivers know where they're going. And I'm going to shoot it back up to Jason.
Everyone, I have some terrible bronchial thing, and I sound much worse than I actually am. But yeah, we agree that I sound like Christian Bale Batman. No joke.
Yeah, totally.
We're not getting away this
totally.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm in New York City. I just got really weird news, so my brain is in like 7 different places trying to process. But I love you all, and I'm going to pass it to Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Zirkle. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it is still 90 degrees.
Wow.
So I am ready for the fall. And I will pass it over to Lily if Lily wants to say good morning, our excellent sound person.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lily. Coming over here from Philly, right off of anywhere on 95, honestly. Right next to the Betsy Ross Bridge, my favorite bridge. I get to go to South Jersey and then come right back home because I don't stay in Jersey too long.
Hey now, why are you coming over here?
It's not my fault you guys have really good malls. It's fun over there.
And good liquor stores and good other stores that we're not going to talk about. And all kinds of things are happening over in New Jersey.
Like hairspray.
Very fun.
There's a lot
Like
of
hairspray.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Jason, I can't stop the nurture in me. We didn't, I got to tell you some advice, but don't look at Marion's face when I say this. Okay?
Look at
Do
Marion's
not look
face.
at
I'm
Marion.
looking at her face.
This is what I want you to do. I want you to gargle with apple cider vinegar.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, I mean, of all the
Marion shut her camera off for that.
there's some homeopathic things where I'm like, no. And apple cider vinegar is actually like bad for the enamel on your teeth. But I will totally
I
do
once
that.
had your voice
Absolutely.
for a month. I had no pain, no other cold, and I
Right.
used it, and it was gone. Gargle, but brace yourself. It's an
Well, the weird thing
experience.
is, okay, so my students were having a really hard time reading Frankenstein. Like, I mean, it's a complicated novel. I get it. The vocabulary is elevated. The sentence structure is
For
complicated.
sure. Yeah.
And so, I was like, well, would it help? And I told them just like find a book on tape, like listen to it while you read along, because like a lot of the words you've just never seen them written down, and
Sure.
and they couldn't find one. So I was like, do you want me to record it? And they're like, yeah. So I recorded volume 1, chapter 1 of Frankenstein, and they loved it, and they're like, we want more. And then this happens. And so like I kept like I was born a Genovese. Like I have I can't
That
do like
sounds
Catherine
great. I
Taylor.
want to
Like the
hear
monster is
that.
gonna be like, I knew I would receive this reception.
Yeah. I love Frankenstein, the novel. I love it, love it. I've taught it a bunch of times, and my daughter is an avid reader, Haley, and she never read it. And just this weekend, she read it, like 2 hours or whatever it took.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
it's so fast.
yeah, yeah, and it's so good. And she the whole time she's just going, I can't believe I never read this. I can't believe I never read this. So yeah, yeah. I think students respond to it well, though.
When it's fun because like my
Once you
less
get in, I mean, once they figure
yeah.
out how to just crack it open, yeah.
Well, like my less sophisticated students are like, it's not a green like what? Like, I mean, they really don't know that it's not the 1931 film. Whereas like my more advanced students are like already discussing like, Orientalism and gender politics and like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like wherever you are, like it hits you in this like fantastic place.
Yeah, yeah, great stuff.
Okay.
Great stuff. And now we're ready
Okay.
for more great stuff.
And we'll
Let's-
keep literature's not dead, it keeps going. And we're here
Yeah, yeah.
to keep the channel open to
let's-
send to you slushies.
Let's talk about the poetry of Michael Montlack and see what we consider about that, okay? We got Your Hair Wants Cutting. Should we have Marion read it? I think so.
I think so. Hang on. Hold, please.
Just because, yeah, the slushies will never know, but Marion has a hairdo today. So that's all we're going to say there. Although I should take a picture.
I got my hair
For
done.
yeah, I think I'll take a picture for the podcast.
I lack the upper arm strength to blow my own hair out. I went and had it done, but you should know, slushies, it's 120 degrees here and pure humidity. So as soon as I stepped out of the salon, it looked like someone stuck like a broomstick on my head, like one of those straw broomsticks. Anyway,
You should also know that in the old days we referred to this particular blowout as newscaster Marion.
Yes.
Oh,
I
Newscaster
told
Marion.
people here, I was like, don't I look like a newscaster? And they were like, what? Anyway.
What is news and what is caster?
What is this thing you speak of that we shut down across the world? Okay. Your hair wants cutting, my grandmother would say, sitting there at her window, monitoring the restless crows, her robe nearly as ancient as she. Since when are you concerned with fashion? I once dared to ask. I was 17, restless as those crows. I knew she wasn't talking about my curls. Plumage, she used to call it when I was a boy. Sit down, little peacock, your hair wants cutting. Even then I knew it was a cutting remark, laden, throwing cold kettle water on my fire. I reminded myself that she was a widow and was glad that at least I would never cause a woman to suffer such grief. I reminded her how I donned a hat most days. She stared me up and down, her eyes like the ocean's green cold. Clever. Your kind seems to have a clever answer for everything. I swallowed the indictment. Why not make yourself useful, she said, putting down her teacup, eyeing the trash on her tray. I was glad to oblige, happy to depart before she could notice the low waist of my trousers, let alone the height of my heels.
Ooh,
Well
nice read.
That was fun to read.
Did a great job too.
Fun to read. Quite the story, right? That scenic moment, the sense of characters created just with the gesture of that line, your hair wants cutting.
And I think we should say up front, these are Michael's Mad Hatter poems. You know, and some will recognize that that opening quote used as the title and the entrance to this poem.
So
Dagne,
Dagne,
can you say more about that? The Mad
Yeah.
Hatter poems?
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, so the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland says to Alice, "Your hair wants cutting," when they meet at the tea party. And the trio of poems that we've got in front of us today, I understand Michael considers them all to be his Mad Hatter poems.
That's great.
And
So,
yeah,
so the cover letter mentioned a chapbook, or is it smaller? Is it like a triptych or a chapbook?
he doesn't go into that with the letter that he shared with us originally. And I think we didn't want to, you know, we wanted to make sure we were just discussing these poems, but they got the feel of that. I know he has a new collection coming out in 2027, but I'm not aware that these are in them. I guess it'll all come out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to say, I didn't recognize the epithet. Like, I'm not as up on my Alice in Wonderland as perhaps I should be. I recognized it in some of the other poems, but not here. So actually, I was thinking of Kathy in that Kathy used to share Pittsburghisms with me. And would say things like, you know, when she was growing up, they would use language like, you got to red up the room.
Okay.
Did I say it right, Kath?
Yeah, you know what I think you're also thinking about is this construction. We never say to be. Like, we say your hair needs washed,
Right.
not needs washing. Right. We
Right.
say your hair needs washed, my bed needs made. Right.
Right.
We just don't, you know,
Really?
and yeah, and it was the hardest thing for me to lose when I grew up and moved away from Pittsburgh, because the smartest people in Pittsburgh do that. That idiomatic thing just happens there. And
Wow.
yeah, and so, like, you know, it was like we say pop for soda and buggy for shopping cart. There were other words that like were really easy to swap out, but that verb situation was so hard for me. At one point in grad school, I actually was telling people, but pinch me every time I do it. And and so it was kind of easier, but it still sounded awkward to say your hair needs washing because I could fix it in middle of the word.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Mm,
say your hair needs washed.
Right.
You know what I
yes.
mean? And I'd be
Yes.
saying your hair needs washed. That was what was natural, but I would go, why I would throw the ing, so it was still sounded odd.
So
Like
is
that is an odd
that
construction, right?
sense of like, so my idiosyncratic response was, oh, that's a regional phrase, not that comes
Mm.
from, right? I wasn't catching Lewis Carroll. I was catching, was it?
Yeah, I didn't catch it either. That's why I asked
Yeah.
Dagne if like we need that for context or if we should ignore that for context. Because
I,
if we're not like, because
I,
I don't know how
yeah.
many people would recognize that phrase.
Yeah, I think we could decide that later in the conversation. But also for me, the phrase your hair wants cutting does feel more familiar, though, and not just because I know it from Alice in Wonderland. So it's interesting around what expressions we're used to being exposed to and which ones we're not, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Gotcha.
interesting because for me, it sounds Southern. It sounds like
Right.
something a Southern grandmother might say
Yes.
to their
Yeah.
grandson, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how we've all adopted these idioms as our own localities.
Right.
Well,
Right.
English just is splitting all the time in that way. Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, I like the relationship as it's sort of drawn here with that grandmother figure and monitoring the restless crows. What a great thing to be doing. Yeah, that sounds like important work.
And I think the poem does a really good job at catching the cutting comment, right? So, you know, parents, grandparents, when they say something like, "Oh, that'll grow back," right? When you get like a bad haircut, right? Or
Yes.
like this, like, you know, it's a cutting remark, right? And so the way in which the poet takes the comment and then gives you the relationship based on the comment is pretty compelling.
Mm.
It's also super prosy, right? So I wanted to maybe have a conversation around the lyric and the mellifluousness of the line, and does it come across as poetic, or does it feel like flash to you? Like where are you in the response to the form? Because Slushies, it's a paragraph.
I actually really liked the lineation. I thought it worked really well. I mean, you all know my theory about the line running interference with the intonation of the sentence. And if you look at kind of, it's all end stopped at the beginning, and then it begins to sort of interrupt with, I knew she wasn't talking about my curls, even though I knew it was a cutting remark. And so the sort of the extra emphasis that's placed kind of in these moments of the sentence that otherwise wouldn't be, I thought worked really beautifully. And the line is sort of like the longest it can be without getting Whitmanian and sort of like losing all lyric coherence and just being a sentence. So I was actually like a big fan. And because of the way that the second voice is being wrapped into it, so when the grandmother's voice, you can't see this Slushies unless you're on our page looking, but the grandmother's voice is in italics. And so
Right.
we're kind of switching back and forth. And then the way those begin to wrap around the line at the end. At the beginning, they're just embedded in the line. And then your kind seems to have a clever answer. Why not make yourself useful? Like I thought it worked really beautifully.
So, Jason, I love that you think the Slushies are up on this, but they might not know about your wonderful book, Nothingisms.
Yes,
Plural?
you can
Plural?
read all about it in my essay collected, Nothingism. Uh,
Nothingism, where you articulate
which,
your theory of the intonation of the line.
yes,
Could
which
you take maybe
choice, a journal for
2 seconds from
librarians called a must-have for all collections, such as
it?
Black and Index.
Circus
Uh,
reviews.
yeah, no, but yeah, but I mean, I mean, I say it at length in an essay, but the bottom line is that the sentence intonation is being um, cut against. That there's other kinds of intonations that wouldn't be present in prose that the line break creates. The quick and dirty.
I like the way it kind of folds back on itself, where you have, it's not, there is some discussion for this protagonist. He's kind of arguing back with her. Some of it is overtly, since when are you concerned with fashion? I once dared to ask, but the rest is kind of internal in the poem. Like you have this consideration of clever and the idea of the teacups going back and forth. So um, there is that tension of what the reception is of this remark and his attitude towards the grandmother's feeling about his hair, and it's kind of internal, but it's interesting that we see the conflict on the page.
Yeah, I really like the trust that this poet has in the reader. I feel like we're not directly being told things, so it makes your brain want to reread. And one of my favorite parts is I reminded myself that she was a widow and was glad that at least I would never cause a woman to suffer such grief. I think that shows such personality, and it's an idiosyncratic way to think about widowhood and kind of blame and responsibility. And I like that it's sort of, shooting off in a different direction for just a little moment. Otherwise, the poem in some ways would be very kind of like I-centric, and it's not.
I must say, I want to agree with everything that's been said, and I like that observation, Jason, that this line is about as long as it can be without actually becoming a full-on prose poem, because I appreciate the lineation in it, and I really want to say I find often dialogue in a poem can chuck me out and make me feel like, but is this really prose? You know, is this a poem? But here, this juxtaposition of these comments along with other imagery is just it's just coming together really, really beautifully for me. And a line like clever, your kind seem to have a clever answer for everything. You know, I love that because we're left also wondering, well, what exactly does the grandmother in this context mean by that? You young people, you people too concerned with fashion, you poets. And in the context of knowing about the Mad Hatter thing, well, the Mad Hatter was known for rhetoric and witticisms. And that kind of dovetails with the poet piece. So yeah. Sorry, guys, I never wrap it up properly, but I.
Oh no, well, and I mean, this is, you know, I know Michael. This is like a 1970s childhood, right? Or 80s childhood, and it's like if you look less gay, you'll be less gay.
Yes, yes.
Just look less gay, and then you'll be less gay. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the you know the low waist and the high heels.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah, and
the other thing I'd like to call attention to is those two words that are set off on their own. And that I think those are the twin poles, the laden and the clever, which is like the grandmother's undercurrent of saying the thing without saying the thing, and his remarks back to her, you know, so they're kind of dancing around this topic. It's just, I think if you look at those two words, that kind of encapsulates the whole undercurrent of the poem.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree.
I love the small details in here, like the ocean's green cold.
right?
Mhm.
Such a great
Yeah.
line.
And it's throwing cold kettle water on my fire. It's so in keeping with this, old lady on her porch somehow, right? The kettle water.
Yeah, in her home that probably is kind of frozen in time, it feels a bit
Mhm.
like. Yeah, I agree with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, we do have two more, right,
Hmm.
Michael? Are we feeling like it's time to vote?
Let's vote. Yeah,
Hear it.
Let's vote.
thumbs up.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, vote. And it's in! Woohoo!
Woo!
Yeah,
Woo,
yeah.
woo.
Thank you, Michael. And we're moving on to muchier. Love that already. Muchier. Who would like to do it?
I can do it.
Thank you, Dagne.
Muchier. Picture me on a grand terrace, tipping my hat, crossing a bridge over the river of defeat. It's definitely a state of ascent, being owed rather than owing, a blatant triumph against the conventional, a la Lord Byron, a monocle without glass worn for style. It's an advance for a memoir about a life you haven't yet lived, bound to be lost on some, but admired by all, likely absent during the lessons on common subjects, algebra, classic literature, biology, more devoted to the mastery of the quaintest arts, porcelain, calligraphy, tapestry weaving, drag, as ephemeral and ethereal as a bubble. It's not something you adopt. It's something that abducts you. Enviers call it utter madness, but the muchiest of the muchier won't even fathom the phrase. Oh, that was fun to read.
It sounded fun to read. It really
Oh,
did.
yeah, yeah.
That first sentence, well, the first two sentences rather, are just magical. Right? Picture me on a grand terrace, tipping my hat, crossing a bridge over the river of defeat. It's definitely a state of ascent.
Of ascent. It's a climb. Yeah.
Right?
We should say that this is one tight stanza,
Yeah.
not a prose poem like the one before.
Right.
Shorter lines.
Yeah, and a reminder, or for new listeners, you can go to pbqmag.org and look at these. See how they are on the page.
And also, not to put Jason on the spot, but one of my favorite poems that Jason wrote over the years was a poem called Wester.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I knew
that's
you were
fair.
going to mention that, Mary. I thought of the
That,
same
how
thing.
can I not, right? So we'll make sure to, Slushies, we'll put that in the
Okay.
show notes because it'll just tickle you, right? Which is
Yeah.
kind of how I feel now that I fully understand that all three poems are doing the Alice in Wonderland Mad Hatter bit, right? Like, and I'm sorry to call it a bit because I don't mean it's a gimmick, but like now that I'm reading it through the lens of the Mad Hatter, I like it even better. Like I liked it on the first read, but now it just like takes on a depth and a resonance that I hadn't seen.
Just
Yeah, and I mean, but that's why I brought that up on the first one. Like, our readers aren't going to know that,
Right. Right.
right?
And
So,
some of
so
them, I mean, like if you're a very dedicated Lewis Carroll fan,
yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
makes sense.
That
Oh,
makes good.
I was gonna ask, do you, sorry, do you think the word conceit has a negative connotation? Because I often will talk about something like this, like, because I don't want to use the word gimmick, obviously, and that's like a really kind of mean word to use, even though it's like my favorite song in Gypsy. But like, yeah, I think of it as a conceit that like everything is sort of that, like when there's an intellectual idea that's underpinning the structure of the work. I use the word conceit, but then I've gotten in trouble when I use words that I think are just evaluative and descriptive, and then people are like, "How dare you, sir?" So
I
I just
think
wanted
you're
to make
saying
sure. Does everyone like the word
conceit.
conceit? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
I think yes, right? And I think I mean, maybe we all sound like a bunch of metaphysical poets, but yes, right? Like it's the thing that is part of the intellectual project, as you said. It's like kissing cousins with ekphrastic, right? It's sort of like if you're
Yes.
the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like the art is the character that has transcended Lewis's narrative and now is occupying this series. And so how is it's got like a conceit seems to catch what we needed to catch.
That's a foundation
Yeah.
that's built on another text. Yeah, the intertextuality of
Yes.
the conceit.
So towards the end of the poem, we have this line, enviers call it utter madness, and utter madness is in italics. Are you Alice in Wonderland folks thinking that's a quote? Is that a Mad Hatter quote, or is that in italics for another reason?
I'm not aware of it being a quote. Muchiest of the muchier, and this use of muchier, I'm muddier on. I actually went back to my text last night. I love Alice in Wonderland. I've read it many times. It's interesting when these poems came along because I just recently read a chapbook by a Canadian British poet called Alice in the City. So also Alice as a jumping off point, but very much from Alice's perspective. And I thought this language sounds so familiar, but I don't remember much here. Anyway, I haven't spent much time running it down, but I have seen a reference to it possibly being used as dialogue in Tim Burton's film
Oh.
for the Mad
Oh,
Hatter.
interesting. Yeah.
Being unique to Lewis Carroll's text. So there's that, right?
I thought they were just making it up like Jason did with the Wester. Like I wouldn't have
Well,
concerned myself with whether, you know what I mean?
Lewis Carroll did play with language a
Sure,
lot.
sure.
A lot. So I think
bet.
it probably is from the text, but I think it was made, it was certainly made bigger than in the Tim Burton film, with Johnny Depp saying it. So anyway.
First off, is the Johnny Depp film or the Tim Burton film good?
No.
It wasn't my cup of tea.
I feel like Tim Burton, and I
Ready to
love
talk about
Beetlejuice
tea.
too. I don't want to say anything mean about Tim Burton.
Well, I love
But
Tim
like,
Burton, but some of his stuff is
oh my
off.
God, that Planet of the Apes.
I know.
Yeah, like some of
Wait,
his stuff is just like off.
But
Yeah.
this
It's just
poem
like,
is doing like it's a dramatic monologue, and I didn't
yeah.
catch that it's a dramatic monologue for the Mad Hatter. I caught that it was a dramatic monologue, but I thought it was the speaker being, the this sort of proxy for the author because I wasn't
Yeah.
understanding the
Yeah,
context.
so here's the challenge, right, of how much context is needed, right? Because if these poems go out in the world individually or even a couple of them together, unless unless we're asked, we don't really have that context to wrap around the poems. But if you pick this up in a chapbook or it's part of a collection, and it's going to be a lot more obvious.
Or from an
Therefore,
I'm sorry, Dagne.
no,
Like,
go ahead.
it might be fixed if we admire these poems in the way we title them, like the sequence from, or like the Mad Hatter sequence.
Exactly. I think that's kind of where I was headed, was thinking, is there a way that we could do it in a subtitle or something like that? Because I think the poems are like they're doing their own thing on their own, but they really do feel enhanced when you know the lens that's being used for the speaker and for the experiences in these. Much here becomes really quite elevated when it's like, oh, this is the Mad Hatter talking. I totally agree.
I also think that, particularly with this one, for me, the it's is almost operating like an indefinite pronoun until you get to utter madness. But before you get for utter madness, I'm sort of putting it's in relation with Lord Byron / self-mythology. And so I don't need the Mad Hatter for this poem.
Right.
For me at all. So I think that it's just interesting. I think about that choice to have us get the utter madness near the end.
Mhm.
It does, similar to the last one, I think it then rewards rereading, which feels like such an admirable goal for a lot of poems.
Right.
Yeah, a late reveal is a really neat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to be bad cop for a minute. I do not appreciate. I don't understand. I don't. Yeah. I get a little bit like, oh, disappointed by the two sentences of lists.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not pleased with them at all, especially the one with the subjects, because the mastery of the quaintest arts, those are at least like interesting, and ending with drag is fabulous. But we do have two lists in a row, and the first one is not that really absent during the lessons on common subjects. That's just not strong. Like, even so, why would you list the subjects when they are common and not interesting words? You know what I mean? Whereas those arts are quite interesting, which ones are chosen, and I love that it builds to drag.
Kath, I totally understand what you mean about that list. Like there's the way they're stacked on top of each other, or so close to each other in the poem seems like to sort of slow things down a little bit. I think the reason I was actually enjoyed the list, right, is there's something about the music of that line where it's likely absent during the lessons on common line break subjects, right? Algebra, classic literature, biology, right? There's something almost like a trombone, right, at the end of the sentence with biology. And I can trust it because of the so more devoted to the mastery of the quaintest line break arts. And then that second list, porcelain calligraphy, tapestry weaving, comma, line break, drag, right? And so the what's happening, I think, in the line breaks makes me like forgive is such a strong word, that seems ridiculous, but like I'm not disappointed by the lists because the way the line breaks are working, it seems like they're earned. Though I get your point now that you show it to me, I'm sure it could be sort of tightened up, like the list could definitely be tightened up, but I think the poet's in control of the flow of them.
I also, and it's not necessarily a bad cop statement. It's more of my own reading, is that I also just don't agree with the idea that like biology is an utter madness. Like I do think there's a little bit of this speaker a snootiness towards calligraphy over algebra. My brother studied math, and he's very artsy actually in how he thinks about math. So, and then it kind of makes me also one other thing. It's an advance for a memoir about a life you haven't yet lived. Immediately made me think of Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love. But I was like, actually, I feel like she potentially, or at least her persona, would like maybe potentially fit into this paradigm. But then what's interesting is it's like, is the utter madness like the advance giver, or is it the the person who takes the advance? And so I sometimes felt that there was a lack of clarity in this one that made me not really sure about the control of the poem all the time.
Thanks for that, Sam. Anybody try to read Eat, Pray, Love?
Oh, I tried.
I read the excerpt from the new memoir that was in New York Magazine.
Oh, really?
That's amazing. Yeah. No, it's not, because I talked to my students about this in terms of like novels versus memoirs, that in a novel, like that character is done and that character is complete. Whereas in a memoir, people are always like, and then I found the happiness that would last for the rest of my life. And then like 2 years later, you get the memoir where it's like, I thought I'd found happiness that would last for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not, I truly couldn't read it. I just found the writing. Yeah, I
Eat, Pray,
truly
Love, or
could not read it. That's why I
the
said
new one?
tried to read it. Did
Yeah.
anybody
Oh.
try? I could not force
Yeah.
myself through it. It was so bad for me. Obviously, I'm alone. There's
No,
millions of readers.
but yeah, you're alone in that sense. I've never tried.
I know that a lot of girls in my high school were like reading it, and I read it, but I feel like what was interesting to a lot of them was just like how big her life was, and like
Mhm.
that in itself was like attractive, like, men,
Yeah, that's true.
travel,
Sure.
and like I think
Yeah.
that almost the conceit of that kind of life is what
Yeah,
can pull someone along, especially if I think
absolutely.
if you're 15.
Sure, sure. And when I was much older than that, but and I think that life was what I was interested in, but I just couldn't get through the writing.
Right.
But anyway, we're here to talk about Michael Montlack.
Yeah.
So, are we ready to vote since we have one more?
Mhm.
Are we?
Do
I
it.
think we're all
Yes,
set of
let's
goods.
do it.
Okay.
Let me put
Okay.
my monocle in.
Yes,
It's just for
monocles
fashion,
up.
right? 1, 2, 3, vote. Dagne, I didn't see your thumb. What happened? Okay, that one's not going to be in. And we're going.
It's never a foregone conclusion, Slushies.
Never.
Yeah, that's why we have to keep on your
Scandalous.
toes. If you're
Scandalous.
doing other things while you're listening to this pod,
Never know, Slushies.
just do mindless work, because otherwise you never know what'll happen.
The
So we have
suspense, the suspense.
we have inheritance left. Jason, I know we always have you read because you do such a great job, but with the voice, would you like?
I'll give
Let's
it a
let
try.
Sam
If I
do.
start off, I think Sam should do it. Yeah.
Sam hasn't read in a while. Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Okay. Inheritance. There wasn't much to leave. My sister, also suspiciously unwed, took the cottage and the wagon, but our mother had insisted that the tea set should be mine. It's dainty and a bit chipped, like you, she chortled on her deathbed. I failed to see the humor, but took it just the same, knowing my sister would likely surrender it to the church, where the nuns might put it to good use, but never appreciate its finery, as that would be vanity. I much rather hear my motley chumps slurp from it as they sit steeped in my ridiculous riddles. I never admitted how I crafted them at night alone in bed, in the quiet twilight, the hour I imagined reading bedtime stories to the children I never had. An apprentice son who would have been nice to hand down millinery techniques. Instead, I had the ghost of one, there in my workshop, where imaginary fights erupted over whose turn it was to sweep up the felt or sharpen the scissors. Of course, I appeared mad, a much better impression to leave than the riddle of my bachelorhood. Sometimes I wanted to smash the porcelain cups, chuck them at the bloody caterpillar stinking up the forest with his opium. Why not? There was no one to inherit my pittance, no one to be trusted with my legacy until the appearance of this girl. At what strange yet so familiar. I quite liked her, the way she held her own with me. If ever I had a daughter, I would have wanted her to be as brave as she, defending the poor knave of hearts, accused of stealing the queen's tarts. There in that courtroom, I almost lost my head, but finally found a beneficiary.
Nice
Thank you.
read.
Well
And there's our, like, it's undeniably Alice in
Yeah.
Wonderland.
Yes.
Yeah, that needs no context. We get it,
Caterpillar with
right?
his hookah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I read this that we were mentioned earlier, sort of the reveal at the end, how pleasurable it was to have the penny drop. Like I wasn't clocking, that this was the Mad Hatter. And then when I get to the end and get the Mad Hatter, it sort of throws me back up into the poem. And then I get to re-experience it as I'm finishing it, which is
Absolutely.
freaking wonderful, like way of taking in a poem, right?
Mm.
Really admire
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. Thanks for that, man. That's exactly what I was feeling, and you articulated so well.
And that opening line of a poem called Inheritance, there wasn't much to leave. I just, wow, it
Right.
just runs out of the gate. Yeah.
And I think when you get to the end and realize this again, it's a sort of a monologue in the voice of the Mad Hatter, you get these sort of like arch droll, like this tone comes across on the line breaks, right? So it's like there wasn't much to leave. My sister, also suspiciously unwed, right? So like the line break gives you this sort of like arch aside, right?
Mhm.
That adds to the character.
Something else
Totally.
that this kind of reimagining does is it actually, for me, aligns the Mad Hatter with Geppetto in a way that I hadn't seen before too. And so much of Alice in Wonderland and some of these fairy tale characters for me are just like natural bachelors or widows. And I really like that this one gives this potential backstory as to why. I think it's really working like on a narrative level in a very interesting and fun way.
Mm.
Absolutely. Here we are sitting, swimming in this Alice Wonderland idea, talking and talking. Do we provide the context? Blah, 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 right? I forgot again. And I didn't mind my friend slurping and deciphering my riddles or whatever. I thought that was fabulous way to talk about talking with your closest friends, you know? And then again, as Marion articulated at the beginning, then when you realize that it's Mad Hatter's voice, it's so, so rewarding.
And also, what the Mad Hatter, this character, the Mad Hatter, is creating, maybe he doesn't have children, but he's spending his nights crafting riddles, ridiculous riddles in his bed.
Mm.
And then also, wishing that he could hand down the millinery techniques to someone. So, crafting this finery. That he knows would not be appreciated elsewhere. Um, so it's an interesting look at that creative drive in another iteration.
Yeah. Well,
And the whole
let's see.
echo of what would be handed down if the speaker had children, for example, right? Like that's a theme we've seen, but it really comes to the forefront here, this idea that the speakers ended up having a life where having children wasn't possible, and yet there's this desire for there to be that type of inheritance in his life as well. I find that quite moving.
And
Yeah.
what's interesting when we think about them all together is this Mad Hatter the same as the other two Mad Hatters that we saw too? Like it could be different phases in life where it could be that these are just different kind of channels of that voice, which I think is a really cool way to think about this, because this does not sound completely like the Lord Byron of Mad Hatters or the Elizabeth Gilbert of Mad Hatters, but it could be, right? This person could be having this kind of imaginative structure in their head as well about their lives.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation, Sam, because this one is in a different register, and so I see how you could wonder about that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't normally, put the speakers in a packet of poems together like that, but we're sort of being asked to in some
No,
ways.
yeah, as part of the project. I was gonna say.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But yeah, this one does sort of leave a biographical Michael at the door and just really focuses on the Hatter as kind of the only character present.
Mm-hmm. And for the Hatter has both a grandmother and a mother who tended to make digs. Here we have our mother had insisted that the tea set should be mine. It's dainty and a bit chipped like you. And the whole notion that she chortled on her deathbed. Wow.
That's a great line. I didn't hear that.
I would like to say I preferred it when the quoted speech was in italics in a previous poem as opposed to in quotation marks here, just as because I must admit the thing I least like, whether in prose or poetry, is speech that's not designated in any way, where you have to work it out, because I find it can just be way too much work. But then there's just a question of, okay, so quotation marks through italics, and I love italics in this case. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dagne, about the digs that the grandmother and the mother have taken at this character. And I know we don't know if it's a stable character throughout all the poems, but
right.
I also quite appreciate how it's not passed down, how he's concerned about his the legacy that he'll leave behind, and that he's found a beneficiary by the end. It's kind of a nice break in the cycle of this kind of, passive aggression or aggressive aggression, I guess. Not so passive. The overt aggression of the grandmother and the mother, of having someone who will appreciate your craft and carry it on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that.
I think that sounds like the sound of being ready to vote.
Yeah.
So Marion had to leave, but she left her vote for us in the chat. And if you guys are ready, I sure am.
Okay,
Ready?
sounds good.
1, 2, 3, vote. Okay, and it's in. All right. Okay, Michael, 2 out of 3 isn't bad, and we really appreciate it. So happy and grateful for your allowing us to have this discussion on air like this. So what do we think, guys? Do we have anything else to add or say, or wishes, hopes, and dreams? Anybody? Okay, then, yep. Did I live? So my brother hosts these events. We have the Slim sometimes, and he'll go, I'm going to give you 60 seconds of awkward silence, like to see if anybody, and then people come in if you do that, right? It's really great. But we don't have to do that. We know what we're about. Grateful to everybody for being here, everybody for listening, and keep reading. Thank you very much.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye, Slushies.